Welcome to Yaka Digital Network. Pan-Africanism is the ideology that people of African descent share a common history, common destiny, and strict requirement for solidarity. The movement gained massive momentum in the 20th century, driven initially by diaspora intellectuals who organized to fight racial discrimination globally. In 1945, the Fifth Pan-African Congress in Manchester shifted the movement. It turned an intellectual debate into a highly organized practical agenda for anti-colonial action. Historically, the sole objective was political liberation, dismantling European empires and securing sovereign control over African territory. Today, the primary focus has shifted to socio-economic integration. The priority is establishing the physical and legal frameworks that allow African nations to trade directly with one another. Securing independence was only the baseline. For the continent to secure its future, it must physically dismantle the economic walls that keep its markets divided. Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, was the loudest advocate for an immediate, radical continental government. He warned of neo-colonialism, a system where former empires surrender direct political rule but maintain power by dominating the continent's financial and trade networks. His proposed solution was a United States of Africa, featuring a common defense policy, a single currency, and a central bank. He argued that individual states were simply too small to compete globally. Many leaders rejected this radical approach, favoring gradual integration. This division resulted in the creation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963, a compromise that prioritized national sovereignty over immediate federation. The central tension in African politics today is whether modern, pragmatic frameworks like the East African Community can ultimately secure the economic unity Nkrumah warned was necessary for survival. The philosophical vision of a borderless continent directly clashes with the modern realities of rigid national sovereignty and intense global economic pressure. The first major hurdle is economic structure. Neighboring African economies frequently lack harmonized trade rules and produce identical raw materials, forcing them to compete for external buyers rather than supplying each other. The second is the infrastructure gap. Cross-border rail, road, and power networks remain inadequate, strictly limiting the physical volume of internal trade. Because of these physical limitations, it is frequently cheaper and faster for an African nation to import manufactured goods from overseas than to buy them from a neighboring country. Third, member states frequently employ protectionist policies, using tariffs to shield local industries. These conflicting policies create massive bottlenecks, stalling supply chains at border crossings. To defeat neo-colonial dependency, nations cannot rely on signing treaties. They must physically and legally fuse their individual economies together. The East African Community serves as the region's structured answer to this problem, acting as a microcase of the continental federation process. To systematically break down these obstacles, the EAC utilizes a four-pillar integration model. First is the customs union, which accelerates internal trade by eliminating tariffs between member states. Simultaneously, it establishes a common external tariff, applying the exact same tax on outside imports. For a landlocked country like Uganda, this policy directly streamlines access to coastal ports, preventing compounding tax penalties when importing heavy machinery or exporting agriculture. The customs union forces individual nations to stop competing against one another and operate as a unified collective marketplace to external trading partners. Pillar 2, the common market, creates a seamless economic space for the people themselves. It legally guarantees the free movement of labor, capital, and services, ensuring citizens can establish residence and businesses in any partner state. Yet cross-border business remains hampered by exchange rate risks. This necessitates Pillar 3, the monetary union. The objective is harmonizing fiscal policies across member states, preparing for the adoption of a single shared currency. Executing this requires strict economic discipline, as states must willingly surrender a significant degree of national control over their money supply to a central authority. Functioning common markets and unified currencies insulate the bloc from external financial leverage, directly achieving the economic sovereignty Nkrumah demanded. The ultimate overarching objective of the EAC is Pillar 4, political federation. This capstone unites the partner states into a cohesive political entity, operating under shared governance structures and presenting a single voice in global diplomacy. This remains a complex long-term goal. States currently balance this ambition against the deeply ingrained desire to maintain individual national sovereignty. Institutions like the East African Legislative Assembly act as the ongoing testing ground, forcing member states to practice shared political decision-making. Political federation represents the current institutional framework for Kwame Nkrumah's United States of Africa, providing a practical roadmap for the ideology's long-term realization. For Uganda, regional integration is the core of its national development strategy, specifically coordinated by the Ministry of East African Community Affairs. By actively championing the African Continental Free Trade Area, Uganda executes the practical steps needed to break reliance on non-African markets. Uganda's military participation in regional peace missions is a direct, modern application of Pan-African solidarity through active conflict resolution. By continuously advocating for African-led solutions within the African Union, Ugandan diplomats operationalized Nkrumah's concept of the new African personality. These policy decisions prioritize national security and economic growth, using integration to secure export routes and regional stability. Uganda's foreign policy is structurally engineered to prioritize collective regional growth over isolated national development. Let's apply this to the core syllabus test. To what extent has Pan-Africanism achieved political and economic unification? You must evaluate the limitations. Full political unification remains unrealized, restricted by the persistence of national sovereignty, protectionist policies, and severe infrastructure gaps. On the other hand, highlight the progress in economic integration. Through the EAC's customs union and the AfCFTA, the continent has established the legal mechanisms for a single market that did not exist during the liberation era. The Pan-Africanism of the 1960s was a tool to tear down colonial empires. The Pan-Africanism of today is an administrative tool to build economic bridges. Kwame Nkrumah's dream of unity did not fail. It evolved from a radical protest into the practical, daily architecture of Africa's future. To watch more videos and get all your study content, visit www.yaka.cc.